Trying to regulate my energy and my emotions. I've tried hard. I got decent sleep last night, but I just want you to know, for those of you who've been part of the Epic Story for a really long time, for those of you who used to be part of the Epic Story and you've walked back in today, and for those of you who have already been addressed that you are walking into the Epic Story for the very first time in your life on this day, welcome home. Welcome home. And there are just a few people that we need to thank. All of our partners, many of whom were in the last service, which was amazing. Our structural engineer was in the room from FTF. CCT helped install a lot of our electronics and AV. We have Wave still in the room. They have made this audio video amazing. Anybody excited about the video wall? It's like a game. Like, it was an easy yes when it was presented to me. It was an easy yes, but it is a game changer. But focus right here, okay? There's nothing. It's just right. I know, right here. JLL has been our project manager for over 2.5 years, so you can thank them. They've done a great job. Zada is our architect. They've done an amazing job. And then we also have Mark, who's in the room from CDF, who loaned us the money so that you and I would be able to pay off a mortgage early. So, Mark, we're grateful that you are here. It has been just a massive project. Something that feels like a miracle today. So those of you who've looked at buildings with me, for all of you who have given over the 6 years we've kind of been on this journey, for those of you who've prayed, for those of you who are still giving, I just want to say thank you so much. I also want to say thank you so much to our Epic staff team. If you would help me, they have worked tirelessly so you could step into this space today. A week from tomorrow, my wife Shauna and I will celebrate 24 years, and I just want to say thank you in front of all these people. Just for walking with me, for us anticipating together, and none of this is old hat to us, not just because we're in a new building, but the two of us feel like, kids in a candy shop getting to do the thing God created us to do and aligned and doing it together, and so I'm so grateful. But I think our highest praise and gratitude and thanks has to go to the God who's collectively helped us step into the miracle we're sitting in today. Would you agree? So God, thank you. I know you probably haven't seen all 19,500 square feet in this building yet, but based on what you've seen and experienced so far, on 3, I want you to tell me your favorite thing about the space thus far. 1, 2, 3. The coffee bar? You don't get out much. When it came in, yes. But the video wall, moms and dads, have we been down to the kids' space? You didn't just send your child without checking. You're just like, hey, just go find your. That's been transformed. That was like a parking garage. It's looking amazing. The lobby, so good. This video wall, I know I've mentioned her already, but they promised me the sermon would get better by 3x. With a video wall behind me, so I'm excited about that. The acoustics in this room, because of the work that's been done, the panels and all that. But I think I've got lots of favorite things, but one of my most favorite things is all of the natural light coming into this building. Look at there, right now as I speak. Give me that light. We're really just trying to get those on the back row a suntan. So we're going to drop it for you so you don't have to move. But the natural light rolling into so many floors on this building is pretty, there it goes down, just like that, on the word. That was amazing, guys. 9 o'clock did not get that, so just be glad that you I know you intended to be for the early one to make room for this one, but you got that they did not get. The natural light is incredible all throughout this building. Not only that, but our team got to work here all week. And you guys, I got so many steps in without ever leaving the building. But we can't find each other. If you didn't know our last space, it was amazing. And I'll talk about it in just a moment. But we had one door, literally one door, not even 2 doors at the one entrance, just the one door and one floor. So we could just yell from any point in the basement that we were in. But the natural light coming in is such a huge deal. And if you're new to the Epic Story, the reason natural light is something we will talk about for the next decade is because, friends, we have spent the last 13 years in one of 2 basements. And I know you're not used to being in the basement. We're used to being in the basement. And so all of this natural light that's flooding in, it's just, it's such a gift. And, as you think about this light coming into the building, I could easily ask you, Why is it possible that the light gets in? And some of you would say, if you've been with us for the decade or any part of the last few years, you would say, well, Ben, it's because we're not in the basement anymore. And to some degree, that's true. But the reality is, if those windows were not cut into the wall, there would still not be natural light getting into the space. Are you with me? In much the same way, you need to know that God intends for his light to get into your life and through your life into the lives of others. But if you don't have space for that light to get in, it doesn't matter. Think about this. It doesn't matter how bright the sun is today, and aren't you grateful that summer in December is just crushing itself? It wouldn't matter how bright the sun is. True? Just ration with me. If there were no windows, the light would not get in. Some of you have zero space in your life right now for the light of God, named Jesus, that we celebrate this Christmas season, to even get in. It's not that God doesn't want to. It's just that you don't have space. You've literally crowded out the space. And I get it. We're all trying to figure out life, aren't we? Anybody trying to figure out life out there? Always. And as we try to figure out life, that's a great thing. But what can happen is when we become consumed with trying to figure out life, we make life all about ourselves. And when you make life all about yourself, your life becomes a self-absorbed life. And what I want you to do, just hold your hands up, make the best circle you can. I am not an artist, so this is going to be my circle. It's more of an, it's very much like a stop sign. Which I know is an octagon. But I want you to hold it up again, and I want you to think about this encompasses, just for a visual, this encompasses the total space available in your life. Okay, so just think about that. You can put it down now, but just keep that in mind. There's because in reality is your life is limited, and so is mine, which means all of our lives have boundaries. Are you with me? We have 24 hours a day. We have 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, maybe even 100 years, but we all have boundaries around our life. So I just want you to be thinking, no matter if you're the youngest person in the room or the oldest, if you've been at Epic from day one or today is your day one, I just want you to be thinking about when it comes to the space in my life, it's limited. What is it being filled with? What is it being filled with? And here's the question I want to ask you, that's not meant to be condemning at all. It's just meant to sort of invite us into a reflection process. The question is this: is it possible that a self-consuming life is crowding out the light in your life? Is it possible that a self-consuming life is actually crowding out the space for light to exist in your life? You and I would be wise to go on a quest for self-awareness. Have you ever met someone who's not self-aware? And some of you are like, nope, and we're like, you. It's you. It's great to go on a quest for self-awareness. It can be a gift to you and to the people in your life. But if we're not careful and don't draw boundaries around our quest for self-awareness turns into self-absorption. And when it turns into self-absorption, you and I begin to lean into the great temptation we all face inside of us and outside of us from other voices, which is this: make your life all about you. Make your life all about you. Can I just ask anyone besides myself in this room to answer out loud, how does it work when you make your life all about you? It doesn't. And we keep going, but if I just dial in my pleasure and my happiness and it just doesn't. It's literally not set up to work that way. But can we be honest and say, hey, who's to blame us? I mean, it makes sense that if you're going to find the best life for yourself, you should just keep looking at yourself. But we believe there's some place other than ourselves to look. And so today, we kick off this brand new series called Where the Light Comes Through. It's our Advent series for this year. Advent means arrival. And it's not lost on me that the day we're opening this building, something we've been waiting to arrive for quite a long time, we're also celebrating Advent. And we believe that God sent Jesus to this earth to bring light to the world, and light not only into your life, but into your life and through your life so that others might experience it. And God did so many things to prepare for the arrival of the Christ child. He created the world knowing that one day he would send Jesus in the form of a baby to be born to this Virgin Mary who was betrothed to Joseph. And he prepared for that, but he also prepared by sending prophets. And one of the prophets was a guy named Isaiah. And Isaiah, some 700 years before we have the Christmas moment in history, Isaiah prophesies that the virgin will give birth to a son, and his name will be called Emmanuel, which you may know means God with us. And yet there's one person that kind of comes right at the very end of the preparation, and his name is John the Baptist, and that's who I want to tell you about today. You may know him as John the Baptist or John the Baptizer, but he's a person sent by God to really be the forerunner to the Messiah. And his whole intent was to come to earth and shine light on Jesus, and Jesus would show up shortly after John shows up out of his mother's womb, Jesus would come out of Mary's womb. And I want to show you his life a little bit in John chapter 1. So if you have a copy of Scripture on you, we also have an Epic Church app if you want to follow along. Get the app. All of my notes are in there. All of our text is in there. And we're going to be in John chapter 1, verses 6 through 8, as well as 19 through 23. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand. And the reason we do that isn't a strange one. It's just we want to symbolically declare that we're coming under the word of God and we're asking God for his voice to actually have an effect in our lives. So would you stand with me with that in mind? John chapter 1. Just for the sake of clarity, you need to know that this John in the text, this is not the same John as John the Baptist. This is John, the brother of James. His dad was Zebedee. He was known as, again, he wrote this a lot about himself. He called himself the one who Jesus loves. Don't be offended. It just, everybody's got a friend like this. They're like, I'm pretty sure he loves the whole world, John. But John's writing about John the Baptist. So when you see in the text from John, a man named John, that's not himself, that's John the Baptist. Verses 6 through 8, chapter 1. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. Then down to verse 19. Now this was John's testimony when the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. So they're trying to investigate to him. They're like, wow, there's someone new on the scene. Like, go find out who this guy is. Verse 20, he did not fail to confess, but confessed freely, I am not the Messiah. They asked him, then who are you? Are you Elijah? He said, I am not. Are you the prophet? He answered, no. Finally they said, who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself? John replied in the words of Isaiah the prophet, I am the voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the way for the Lord. When he was asked to declare, and they would have believed anything, who are you, who are you, who are you? He referenced himself only in his relationship to the Messiah. I wonder if we might do the same and discover that more light wants to come into our life as well. You may be seated. John was handpicked by God to show up and to be the one who would prepare the way for Jesus. And you need to understand that John had great clarity about who he was and who he was not. And I wonder how many of our issues in life could be solved if we would just gain great clarity about who we are and who we are not. Anybody? Do you think if you understood who you were and who you weren't, that maybe you would be free just to go live the life you were meant to live, rather than to stay on this constant quest? Who am I? Who am I? You let a boss tell you who you are. You let society tell you who you are. You let all of your emotions and your mental health tell you. What if you just knew who you were and who you weren't, and you could just be at rest in that and be the best version of yourself? That's what John's aim is. He did not diminish the significance of his part, but he never tried to go beyond the part that was assigned to him. And his framework for his whole life is a framework I want us to consider emulating, which is this: I just want to keep making space for Jesus to be the brightest light and the biggest idea of my life. I want to just keep making space for Jesus to be the biggest idea in my life. So can I ask you this question? Are you crowding out the space in your life that Jesus wants to inhabit? Are you crowding it out? Like maybe you're here today and you're trying to figure out faith or come back to your faith or whatever the case may be. And the reality is, even as you're looking for God in some way, you could be here with good intentions. I'm looking for God. I'm looking for faith. I'm looking for a religious community. And yet there's literally no space in your life because you're filling it up yourself. Jesus said these words in John chapter 8, verse 12. It's written like this. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Here's a great promise. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I wonder if some of us might just take him up on that word for the first time ever. I wonder if some of us, coming back to our faith today, might just go, okay, that seems too good to be true, but I've tried everything else. Why don't I just try that route? Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. This is a promise from Jesus, but it won't be actualized in my life or your life if we literally have no space in our lives for him to exist. Anybody ever feel pressed for time? Anybody ever feel like there's too much on the calendar? Anybody like me would love to blame other humans for my calendar, and then I realize I said yes to all the things that are on my calendar? Yeah, I'm with you. And there's literally just no space for Jesus to inhabit. And for us, we don't want to live self-absorbed lives, but when we get consumed with ourselves, some of us in a positive way, some of us feel like, man, I am the stuff. I am like God's gift to the tech world, or I'm God's gift to women. Anybody, guys, think that? Yeah. I was ready to tell you the truth about that if you wanted me to. So we know, but there's something in us that feels a little bit like, that's not right. Even if we're not people of faith in Jesus, there's something in us that's like, that's kind of arrogant. And we know there's an issue when we're self-absorbed with how like amazing we are, but some of us think it's fine when we become self-absorbed with how terrible we are. Some of you, in fact, you feel like you're fine. You're just like, but the reality is, whether it's for positive reasons or negative reasons, if you're consumed with yourself, there's no space for lots of things to exist, including the light of the world. But you were made to have space for that light. You were made to have space for God to inhabit through the person of Jesus and by way of his Holy Spirit. You were made to have a life that's filled with God, not just filled with the things that are consuming you and stressing you out and occupy every moment on your calendar. You were made, some of us we don't even believe this. You were made to be filled with God. You were made to find a home in God. And so, what if that search you've been on doesn't end today, but what if it gets a new path today? Would you even be open to that? I sure hope so. But what's interesting, when we're self-absorbed, we can even find ourselves saying things like, I just can't find God in this season. And here's the reality. You'll see this on the screen. You will not be able to find God when you're consumed with looking only for yourself. It sounds like really great advice, and it even sounds spiritual when someone says, I'm going to the desert or the wilderness or the Red Rocks or wherever to find myself. I'm like you're right here. What do you mean you're going to find yourself? And again, the sort of the lie, like it kind of makes intuitive sense. Like I should go find myself. And listen, I'm all about retreating. I've got intention to do this, even myself tomorrow, to sort of move away from all that's been going on this last week. But if I go looking for myself, what good is it going to do me just to find me? And then I've got to kind of hold myself up as the big idea in my life. But if you go to find God, the promise is if you go find him, you will find him. The promise is you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Paul said to a group of people in Athens who were sort of discussing the latest ideas, something that happens a lot around where you and I live, and he just said to them, hey, the God that you're on a quest to find, I want you to know he's not that far from you. And I don't know what you've been told by religious people like me or people who would stand on a stage like this in some religious setting that you've ever occupied. I just want you to know that no matter what your backstory is, no matter what your past is, your past doesn't have to dictate your future. But I don't think you're going to find the future you want by trying to find yourself. But find Jesus and what he offers you, you will find the very life you were meant for, even if it's one where he's at the center and you're not. That's the life you were made for. But if you just occupy all the space yourself, let me tell you a few kind of real life examples where this will show up. Let's say that you're looking for a job. I know no one's looking for a job here, right? I know no one's discerning, should I stay at my job? No, I know how it works in San Francisco. You've been at the company for 2 weeks and you're already back on LinkedIn going, I got some shares and I'm just exhausted. They're making me come in 2 half days a week. I'm back on public transit. It's hard. I know, it's hard. They're giving you 3 weeks for Christmas, but you got to do 1 day before that break, and I love you. But if that's your posture, you might not want to apply for an Epic Church role. We are looking, but we're just not looking for you. We're on the hunt, but we're okay. We're taking that old leadership advice. It's better to have no one in the position than have the wrong person who wants to be here half day. It's time for me to close. Back to the sermon. So let's just say that you're searching for a job. You're trying to figure that thing out. Is it this fan? Can I turn this fan off? I feel like it's blowing my shirt up. I've got an undershirt on, but it just, I feel exposed enough with the lights. Thank you. It's great. We're just getting the kinks out, and for those of you who thought we would be sort of a stuffy church, we're not. That feels good. Okay, I can stand over here and just stand right over that fan. If you're searching for a job, and you're consumed with yourself, you will wear a pressure in that discovery and decision season that you won't be able to bear the weight of. When you get offered a job, you will take the one that probably pays you the highest or at least has the greatest status in our society. You could do that and still end up miserable because you had your sight set on something that couldn't deliver what you thought it promised to deliver. Or you could create space for God in your job search process. You could invite people who know God and know you to sit at your wisdom table. You could seek the wisdom of God. You could allow God to reframe your motivation. And then you can step into the job where you believe you can make your highest contribution toward the mission for which he sent you to this earth. Or let's say that you've got relational conflict. Anybody having any relational conflict today? No, come on. We're just going to keep having fun with this. Anyone want to point at the person in the room? You're like, no, I made sure they were coming to 9, and I'm here at 10:30, and we're just going to pretend like each other doesn't exist. Thanks for giving us a bigger space. Hey, there are 4 floors in this building. You do not have to see them. But if you're having relational conflict and you just occupy all the space in your life yourself and for yourself, what will happen is you will either be convinced and obsessed over how that person did everything wrong or how you did everything wrong, but you won't make any relational progress. But if you make space in your life for God to come in, you make space in your life to get wise counsel, you make space in your life to say to that person, I'm sorry, you make space in your life to expose before God what you did wrong and take ownership and allow God to heal that and cleanse that, guess what? You might just get a friend back. You might just get a stronger marriage. The thing with your roommate, you might not have to avoid them because you've started making space in your life for God, not just for yourself. Or let's say that you're flooded with anxiety and depression. I know that because of statistics that a number of you in this room are struggling with that right now, and I'm amazed that you came to church today, so give yourself a pat on the back for that. But let me tell you what you're tempted to do. When you just want the pain to end, what you're tempted to do is think that if I just turn inward on myself, somehow the misery will go away. But we know when we're outside of that moment, it never does. So why don't you invite God in that space? Why don't you listen closely to this whole description, why don't you invite a Christian therapist who's competent at what they do? Do not invite a Christian therapist who's incompetent. But I do think a person who knows God, I would invite them to the table. Invite a spiritual director to the table. Attach yourself deeply in this community so that you find men and women that you can trust and invite them in. It doesn't mean that your anxiety will go away or your depression will be released right away. It does mean you don't have to sit in it alone. It does mean they're going to help you not just stay inward on yourself, which never delivers what it promises to deliver you. As you go through the text, in verse 7 of John 1, it says about John the Baptist, I love this, it says, he was not the light. Remember, great clarity on who he was and who he was not, but he came as a witness to the light. He came as a witness. One commentator said it this way, a good witness does not attract attention to himself, but to the person or facts which he represents. We know that in a court system, and so today, as you think about John the Baptist's posture towards Jesus, I want to ask about yours. Are you cool being a witness to the light, or honestly, don't answer out loud, do you really need to be the light? That's a heavy weight to bear. It ends up in misery because you're aiming for something that won't deliver what you've told yourself it will deliver. And John the Baptist is like, I just want to be a witness to the light. But he will continue to be tempted to make himself more than just a witness to the light. They will want him to say, hey, you can take the spotlight. What do you want to say about yourself? And he keeps saying, no, I'm not the big idea. I'm not the big idea. I don't want to be the big idea. If you go to that second part of the text we looked at in verses 19 through 23, they said to him, like, tell us who you are. And we don't see the question in the text, but we see him respond in a way that should let you know who they thought he was. When he says, I am not the Messiah, don't overthink this. Don't think, oh, I've not been to church. No, you don't have to be to church to answer this. Why do you think he told them, I'm not the Messiah? It's real simple. Because they thought he might be or he was. I mean, what an opportunity. Have you ever been in that moment where no one in the room knows the truth about you? And they're like, tell me who you are. I'm like, well, I'm in the NBA Hall of Fame. I'm the best husband. I mean, my wife's not here, but I am the best. I'm the best. He's just like, I'm not the Messiah. They're like, well, are you the prophet? He's like, no. Are you Elijah, one of the Old Testament prophets, raised from the dead? And he says, no. But he doesn't diminish his role. He says, I am the one I'm the voice. I'm the voice making way for the one who is the big idea. I'm the voice making way for the one who is the big idea. They were so willing to make John more than he was. And there are people in your world who are so willing to make you more than you are. And don't we all know there are people in our world who are glad to make us less than we are? Don't buy the more than, Don't buy the less than. One of the things I'm aware of, even as Epic Church continues to grow and whatever's happening, I'm aware that I am getting more praise than I've ever gotten in my life, and I'm getting more criticism than I've ever had in my life. And you know what I need to remind myself? Ben, don't let it make you more than. Ben, don't let it make you less than. And the same is true for every one of us. And John the Baptist just decides, like, I'm not going to do this. So here's what I want to say from a principle standpoint. The world keeps inviting us to make ourselves the point of every story. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. The world will keep inviting you. And they keep doing this with John. And I want to show you in John chapter 3, verses 27 through 30. Here's what's happened. Fast forward. John has grown up. He's still doing ministry. Jesus has grown up. And Jesus starts doing public ministry. And so just imagine, those of you who work on a team, or let's say you have a region, you're a salesperson. Don't you love it when a coworker comes into the company in a new way and takes half of your region and gets half of your salary? Love that, don't we? We're just like, yeah, come on. No, we're like, hey, if I'll still get paid, I'll gladly give them the work. So John the Baptist has been the one baptizing anyone who wanted to belong to the way of God. He's been preaching. And now, all of a sudden, people start going towards Jesus, and they're leaving John behind. And what it looks like, if you're keeping score with the wrong scorecard, keep that in mind. What's your scorecard? If you're keeping score with the wrong scorecard, it looks like John the Baptist is losing. And I wonder if there's an area of your life right now where it looks like you're losing, but you need to reframe the truth. So they're like John, they're going over to the new guy. How will John respond? Will he have a scarcity mindset? Verse 27, to this John replied, a person can receive only what is given them from heaven. You yourselves can testify that I said about what I said. I am not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him. The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater, I must become less. I love that. They're like, hey, John had an opportunity to be the big idea, didn't he? And he just goes, no, I'm not the groom, I'm a friend of the groom. I'm not the light, I'm just shining the light on the one who is the light of the world. And then he says, notice this, he says, Jesus must become greater, I must become less. He does not mean that he needs to become less than who he is, he just means he should be less than who Jesus is. He just means I'm not going to take up all the space. He's not humiliating himself. He's right-sizing. If the whole point of everyone's existence is to make Jesus the big idea in their life, you just need to know I'm going to keep making him the big idea in mine. But isn't it hard, especially this time of year, not to make ourselves the big idea? Anybody excited about Christmas? Anybody stressed about it? Because even our deal, like, oh, I've got so many gifts to buy for other people because I'm so generous. The reality is you want something and you know that if you get them something, surely there will be a return. And even in our quest to make that season about other people, we're like, they're going to think a lot of me if I give them something great. Some of you have Christmas travel. Anybody have Christmas travel? Anybody, again, unless the person's in the room, you can keep being, don't be honest, but anybody have Christmas travel that you're not excited about, people you're going to see? Yeah, it's the worst, isn't it? It's hard not to be self-consumed. You're like, I spent $1,000 because even to stay in the state of California, it's a $1,000 flight during Christmas. And you're going to see people that you spent $1,000 to go see, and you know they're going to be upset with you when you get there. It's okay. At least it's not an election season as you see your cousins and your mom and your stepdad. And others of you are traveling with small children, and you're already cursing that trip. For a couple of reasons, because you used to, remember when you didn't have kids, you're like, who has got that baby back there? But now your baby's 2 years old, and not only are you going to be miserable the whole 6-hour flight to the East Coast, you've got to pay for that 2-year-old's ticket. No longer do they get for free. I mean, it's just like we're just not even looking forward to it. Some of you are wondering if you're going to hit your mark for your year-end bonus, so you're trying to think like, oh, will this deal come in? Can I tell my boss that? And we can just be so self-consumed in this season, but I want to encourage us to keep making space for the light. Let me give you one secret about how you can make space for the light. It will have everything to do with what you magnify. And I know you have a lot of things you could magnify. So did Mary, the mother of Jesus, that night when the angel says to her, you're going to give birth to the Messiah. Could she have magnified a few different things? She's a teenager who's never been with a man. She's going to have a baby, and she's not going to have just any baby. She's going to have the Messiah. She could have magnified what will the townspeople say, what will my parents say, what will Joseph say. She could have magnified a lot of other things, but she ends up singing the song. I'll say the singing for Seth. But here's one lyric from that song. Essentially, out of all the things she could magnify, she just goes, my soul magnifies the Lord. Let me tell you what you have an option for today. You, my friend, get to decide what you magnify. But whatever you magnify, can I just tell you something that's true? There's going to be implications based on what you magnify. So it's your choice. You've got a life, you've got so much space, and you get to decide what the big idea is in your life. But whatever you make the main idea of your life, whatever, make it pleasure, there's implications. Make it wealth, implications. Make it relationships, implications. Make it space for a God, there are implications there. And some of you are like, I'm ready to start making space in my life for God. Well, let me give you the last idea. You will not make room in your heart for Jesus if you do not make room in your calendar for Jesus. A lot of you are well-intentioned. Anybody wish that good intentions mattered more than they do? Seriously, I had good intentions not to destroy the food I did during Thanksgiving. I did. I'm telling myself the same thing for Christmas. But I know I need more than good intentions. How about you? What do you need to make space? I want to ask you to take a posture of prayer. I'm going to invite our worship team back. And you keep your eyes open for a minute. I'm just going to, since we're in a new space, I want you to know that this stage that's about 30 feet wide-ish, I want you to know that this can become just a kind of our new altar here. So if you want to pray during this space, during this time, just you and God, that's awesome. We also have carved out a space to my right and a space to my left. You see those spaces where we're going to have prayer and ministry leaders who are ready to pray with you and to pray for you. Some of you, I think today would be the first day if you would be courageous enough just to say, Jesus, I want to open my life and the space in my life to you for the very first time. Like, I want to give you my life. I put my faith in you. I don't know everything I need to know, but I know that this is the first step. Like, he wants to respond to that request that you make. Others of you, you've had really good intentions, but not because you meant to, but you became convinced that if I just keep pressing in on myself, I'll get where I want to go, and it hasn't helped you. I wonder if today might be a day we go, Jesus, I believe my best future is in your hands, so I'm going to make you the big idea. Pray with me. Go ahead and stand and pray with me, actually. What do you need to make space for today? What needs to be removed so that the space can exist for Jesus to inhabit? What priorities need to shift even in this moment? Jesus, we love you. We receive you now. We are thankful for this building and the space it provides for natural light and for all these people. But we, more than that, we want to make space for you. So we open our lives to you. We ask that you would come and you would come close. Would you fill up our hearts? Would you fill up our minds? Would you fill up the space in our lives so that our lives might be rightly ordered? Out of all the things we could magnify, we just want to say to you in this moment, we would love to learn how to start magnifying you more than all the other things that we've been making the main idea in our lives. Do what it is you want to do in these moments. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Let's respond.